and they're a protected species. They're very vulnerable because of loss of habitat, because they nest in hazel hedgerows, which we don't really have anymore. And yet, because they're now protected, the hazel hedgerows are now protected. And so what I love about this is that this tiny little animal that nobody really knows all that much about is now reshaping our modern landscape. Because they're protected, they're now planting more hazel hedgerows so that these guys can like live and survive. So for me, this was one of the things I was most proud of, I think, in my whole like artistic career. And I guess if there's time, I should mention the mosaic thing. So with mosaic, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I went to Greece to learn the traditional methods of mosaic, and it was kind of back in my mind for a long time, and I was fiddling about with it, and then this opportunity came up to create a wall-based public artwork outdoors in Selkirk in the Scottish borders, which happens to be where my husband grew up. And I was like, well, this is like the stars have aligned. I have to get this project. And yeah, I just gave it like my absolute all. And that was, at the time, that was like my first solo public art project. That was the first time I'd kind of split from the other sculptor I'd worked with. And I just went like all for it. And for me, it was almost like a way of combining my two-dimensional painting work with like my experience of public art, and that kind of kicked things off. So that's also in here.
How long would something like that take you, the entire wall?
The entire wall. So it's kind of spread out. It's probably the whole mosaic is about 30 meters, and it took like the best part of a year to create. Yeah, wow. Definitely.
Is that?
Yeah, that's one of the images there. So that's very much a community project as well. It was like designed together with the community. It portrays the community. It's made together with them. They made like all these leaping salmon like dotted along the wall. So it was like entirely with them. We also had this like local hero who was the local scoutmaster, and the people had voted again like for the person to be portrayed as like the savior of the town, and is like a metaphor. We've got mythology, of course. I had to sneak a bit of mythology in. He's like the tamer of the Kelpie, and the Kelpie represents the flood because it's all mounted onto the flood defence wall. So yeah, that's also going to be forever like one of the projects I'm most proud of. Yeah, so I think just to finish, I guess. It's been like a weird journey, because like I say, I started thinking that I'm a painter, and then got so interested in sculpture, and for a long time I just felt like I wasn't like a legitimate sculptor. I felt almost a bit like a fraud, like I'm working on these like amazing public artworks, but I'm not like creating them with my own hands. And I feel like now I've arrived, and I'm like, I can do this stuff, like I have got the skill. Which kind of brings me to the sculptures that are here now. So I'm creating a memorial artwork for a cemetery in East Calder in West Lothian, and it's inspired by the river there. So I've created these like river animals, which are eventually going to be cast in aluminium, and I'm based at the Edinburgh Sculpture Workshop, which is just 10 minutes down the road. They're very open to visitors, so just pop along. And it's just really cool because they have a full working foundry there, and I think it's like the only place in Northern Europe where you can like cast your entire thing yourself. So usually foundries are quite closed off. You would give them like a model, and then they do the whole thing for you, and they just give you like the bronze or the aluminium or the iron at the end. Whereas here you have an opportunity to do that whole process yourself. And as I say, that's what I'm really interested, like making things with my own hands. So as part of the process, you create molds of your original model, and then in order to test the molds, you pour like plaster or something like that in it, and that's how these artworks came about. It's almost like a byproduct of the casting process, and so that's why they're so affordable. because eventually these will be in aluminium, and everyone's welcome to come and watch me pour that aluminium myself at some point soon. Yeah, I think that's more or less all I wanted to say about all my work.
Well, great, thank you for that. I really appreciate you going into so much detail. I think, I don't know about you, Georgina, but the thing that strikes me is just the variety of media that you work in, and you've mentioned your love for making things with your own hands, and I guess the confidence or self-confidence that comes with feeling. Yeah, please do pass them around.
Pass these round. Thank you. Cheers.
So the confidence or the self-confidence with feeling that, I'm a proper artist or I'm a proper sculptor now, or something like that. And in each of this is possibly like asking somebody to name their least favourite child, but out of all the media that you currently work in, I'm not going to ask you your least favourite.
This is a great question. I can already feel it coming. This is a good one.
Wow.
What's your most favourite?
My most favourite.
And why?
Oh God, it would still have to be painting. I think it would still have to be painting because I still think, well, for one, I think I'm still better at painting than anything else. And for two, it's just like one of those like relationships with a person, like that love-hate thing. Like,
do you know what?
Hate,
Sorry
but
to
you
interrupt
love.
you, but see, before you even said that, in my head I had painting. Honestly, because obviously we spent our whole time at art school together, but Svetlana, the way she spoke about painting was very much, this is why we were best friends, because we both had the same relationship, but you were like almost obsessed with how to create the perfect, balance between certain things. Like honestly, Svetlana was like obsessive with how to, and really learned her craft, not just, winged it and it turned out great, because she has a natural ability, especially for portraiture. So you could paint in anything, but you were like, no, I want to learn, especially like you said, an eyebrow, you just hone in on it for hours. Like, you're always like that. I feel like you, like painting, you always had such a passion for, and it always shone through. I feel like in that, especially the bottom portraiture, like that's one of my favourite. The light and the emotiveness of it, with being so simple but so beautiful. I feel it really captures like your talent as a portrait artist.
And it's weird because like now, like I've been fighting to become like this real sculptor, and I feel like I'm there, and now like all I can think about is how I'm like cheating on painting. Do you know what I mean? I'm like
you're having a naughty
I've not
side thing.
like painted in like a long time. Can I even do it anymore? It's like, yeah, it's,
but the thing
like
is,
a juggling
the
act.
problem with Svetlana is she's multi-talented. Like, she is very good at multiple things, but obviously, naturally, I think you're a painter. But then your painting, as you said, is Greek mythology. A lot of it is, figurative. So even when you're painting, you are building that 3D form, but in the sense of a picture. True. So when you go to do sculpture, it's not that. The Musselburgh sculpture could be a painting of yours. If that makes sense, because the way you formed it is not a million miles away from when you're painting.
It's still
so
figurative, and it's still got a narrative.
It all feeds into
and
each other. Yeah.
But I'm not going to lie, like I still think painting's the hardest.
It is.
Painting is the hardest. That's what I think.
One of the things that shines through to me in any piece of your work is attention to detail. Where does that come from?
Obsessiveness, like unhealthy obsessiveness. Actually, like they slag me off at the sculpture workshop for this, because they're like they're like the Svetlana way, and it's not always a compliment. Like because I just like I'll just keep at it for like hours until like I've got the detail just how I want it, and it comes with a payoff, because you're there for like months at a time, and you're like, what have I actually done in this time? You feel like you're not being productive, but at the same time, you look back on it and you're like, this is now as close as I can see, perfect for my liking. It's so much more rewarding for that. So I don't know, I guess just comes from my personality.
Okay, so talk to me about the mosaic that's behind my head at the moment. I'm not going to turn around and look at this because I'll crick my neck, but I have looked at it quite a bit over the last day or so since you kindly brought it in, and to me it's I think it's the same guy that's in the portrait there.
It is. I actually did not realise that. I brought like 2 artworks of the same guy. It makes me look like I'm obsessed with him now.
So this is your husband?
Yeah, no, it's not.
Actually, this guy he was like a big brother to me and also a mentor. He's an incredible artist himself. And I've known him most of my childhood in Russia. And he's an incredible artist. So he like taught me quite a lot of stuff that I now know. And I think when he last came to visit, like we did a lot of like photographs of each other for reference, because like you just need those kind of things all the time. When you feel like doing a portrait, like it's good to have like a log of portraits. And it's just good to. It's got a good shape of face and everything. So this mosaic, I think I had in my mind this traditional, you see often in like architectural applications, this like green man kind of thing. So that's what I had in my mind, but again, like reinterpreted in my own way. So there's not like the traditional green man, like the hair and the beard would turn into like foliage and leaves and things. Whereas for me, I just kind of wanted the beard to like just go off into like random tangents, and that's where it went. But it was also just an opportunity for me to kind of explore like how detailed can I go with a mosaic, like how small can you make the pieces. Like it's again that kind of maybe obsessiveness of my personality, where it's like, you know, how far can I push it before it's like this is just ridiculous. Like you can't keep breaking this into smaller pieces.
It's stunning. See, to achieve a portraiture from actual pieces, because when you go up close, it's actually not as small as what you think. They're still like the size of maybe some of them Scrabble pieces. And so to achieve, when you stand back, for it to look like a clear portraiture with the details of an eye and what some people couldn't achieve in painting, let alone to do in slabs of material, I think that
really informs my painting. Like this is what's great, because with mosaic, you have to focus on like every single piece. The shape, the colour, the direction, and like because you're taking the time to do that. See, when you go back to painting, you're more aware.
Does it, because you've not got the kind of like the stoppages of basically like you have to stop there because
you don't have the boundaries.
Yeah.
But also it informs it because you're so much more then aware of like every brushstroke has to be like a certain size or whatever.
Those eyes are menacing, but they are following me. Like I can see them from here and they sparkle. I bet you can all see them in your seat. To achieve that, I think it's amazing. It's like the Mona Lisa, but in mosaic.
Come on, now. That's pushing it.
You never know, in a few hundred years.
I have to say, just picking up on the mythology piece, when I saw that mosaic, so together with the portrait, I wondered what was driving you to create one that's dark and one that's light. That's part one of the question. Part two of the question, and this is related to the mosaic and mythology. And apologies, this was my initial impression, was that this head here, I didn't see a wavy beard, I saw half a kraken. So I'm kind of wondering, am I completely barking up a gum tree, or was there some element of mythology creeping in? So first question, light and dark, and second question, elements of mythology potentially creeping in.
Yeah, so the light and dark, I think a lot more of my paintings are dark rather than light. But it's one of those things, like when I was younger I was going through more like emotional turmoil. So it's like Georgina said about her paintings, like inevitably whatever you're feeling, your emotions end up like on the canvas. So there was a lot more darker themes. Now that I'm all happy and settled, they become like just boring. But it's different. Like I guess you're reflecting like whatever is going on in your life, and it's almost like it's not even intentional. You just end up where you end up, like whatever feels right. And but also there's a balance, right? Like maybe you do too many of the light ones, you're like, I need to do a dark one again, like just to bring it back.
To bring it back to reality.
And with the mythology, like I think 100%. I think even when I'm not thinking about mythology, it's always there. Like it's something that's constantly influencing me. So even if it's just like a portrait of my grandmother, I'm not just thinking of her, maybe like imagining her almost like a character in a myth.
Yep.
So I think that was a very good question, because I think you're right. You've sussed me out there.
Good. Well, that's my job. But building on what you were just saying there, you mentioned your grandmother. And I'd like to, ladies and gentlemen, draw your attention to the portrait of Svetlana's grandmother up there. Now, this is a very emotional piece for you, Svetlana. Perhaps you could help explain to us a little bit more about how the portrait came about, why you decided to do it, and then following on from that, some of the techniques you used to try and draw out emotion into the picture. Now, apologies, I appreciate that this is a little bit sensitive.
No, thank you. I wouldn't put it on a canvas if I wasn't like comfortable in sharing those feelings. Do you know what I mean? So my grandmother was like an incredible woman. She was an architect. She received the state prize for being an incredible architect in Russia, and she has a photograph with Yeltsin receiving said award. And she was also an artist. Basically just an incredible woman all round, and then she passed away during the pandemic after many years of dementia, which was obviously like really difficult, because you see like a person like fade slowly and it just seems like such a non-fitting way for someone so fabulous to kind of go. So obviously there was a lot of that in my mind, and I had already painted my grandfather, her husband, and I knew I had to like have a portrait of her, especially after she passed away. And I think I was kind of battling with a lot of my own stuff then. Everybody was during the pandemic. Everybody has stuff they were like dealing with. But yeah, so I think even subconsciously, like it all came through, all this like what you say, like balance between dark and light, like even the way like her hat allows like these kind of harsh streaks of light and shadow like across her face, almost like she's like sliced up by this thing, and the way like with the foliage, I just sort of just gave up on it at some point. So I was like, just can't be bothered to paint any more foliage. But in a way, that's a reflection of like how I was feeling about it. Do you know what I mean?
Like just kind of overwhelmed and
yeah,
just like, I'm done with this feeling. Yeah, I can imagine.
And it's ended up making the space around her look quite empty, and I think subconsciously that's kind of a thing that maybe I needed to portray as well, the way how unfair the way that she like shrank away from life was, and it makes her look kind of small.
So I have to say though, like the way you're describing it, and I get like your feelings, I feel like there's a lot of light here as well. Like there is like the balance, like a juxtaposition. Because obviously I can tell what you mean with the things coming away, and it's kind of like, oh, I'm done with feeling like this. But then there's so much light and goldenness, and almost like that, you know, the what do they say? They call it the evening glow or something. When you get the 6 p.m. glow, like it, you know what I mean? Like I feel like she's got.
Yeah, and that's well, the dominant feeling is like her like glowing and being like this massive inspiration to me, but there's these like kind of subtones of turmoil and like feeling like just
depending on your mood, you can look at it and see it either way.
Exactly, which is
exactly what you're meant to do with a painting.
Yeah, and that's what I like to do. I think just to like hopefully people can relate in some way, and maybe like it makes them think of someone in their life, and you know, like they will take from it what they will, which is quite nice having it in the gallery for a wee bit, because usually it's just in my living room and people don't get it.
I just want to ask you one more question before we open it up to the audience to ask you specifically questions about your work. And it's the same one that I gave to Georgina earlier, which is around non-arts influences. So music, literature, other creative arts. What inspires you when it's not painting or sculpture?
Well, the dark stuff, relating to the dark stuff, like,
let's start off with dark.
Let's start with dark, we finish on a light note. So one of my favourite authors is Irvine Welsh.
Yep.
So that's pretty dark, as a lot of you will know, and like, it's weird because when I was younger and I was painting all this dark stuff, I was reading him non-stop, and I could go through like even the darkest stuff, and I was kind of like okay with it. See now, like I can't even finish a book by him. like, and I'm loving it, but I'm also like, this is affecting me, like, psychologically. This is now, like, this is genuinely hurting me. So, again, like, a weird relationship with that. Do you know what I mean? Like, one of my favourite authors, but I have to be in the right mindset in order to read that. And then on the more lighter side, like music-wise, so I'm Russian originally, so I love like Russian traditional ballads. Gina's laughing because every drunken night at her house ends up with me singing a Russian ballad. That is the finale to the night.
Sorry to interrupt you, but can I say, like, Svetlana will sometimes sing and she'll be like, this is a Russian happy song? Michaela, you'll know this as well, she's been there a couple times. And it will sound kind of happy, and then she'll be like, and this is a Russian sad song. They sound exactly the same. You couldn't tell which one's which. They're all kind of this monosyllabic, like, they're still very emotive, but I don't know which one's happy or which one's sad.
But I think that kind of relates to my roots, and I think that keeps me kind of, it keeps me kind of connected to my Russian roots. So Russian music, and then also like Greek music, so that kind of connects me back to my time in Greece and how much that influenced myself as an artist and as a person. And then just like when I feel like being happy, I listen to Spanish reggaeton, which is a completely different vibe altogether. But there you go.
You're fluent in Spanish. You don't just.
I'm not fluent. Whoa.
Just in case she listens to it just for the beat. No, you understand the lyrics.
Conversation.
She's very good at Spanish.
Well, talking of conversation, and thank you for another good segue there. Let's open it up to the audience. What would you like to ask Svetlana?
Yeah, you said about your passion for the myth and how it always seems to come back into your work. How do you think the pandemic has brought that back into society? And do you think we will be doing better as a society with more of the myth and less of the religious stuff, like the church?
Wow, that's such a good question. Do you know what I think what was incredible to see during the pandemic was like how nature like took hold, like reclaimed the planet in so many ways, and I actually thought of like all these ways, like in mythology there's all these kind of metaphors for that happening, like whether it's like the Hydra like representing, you know, like the full force of the sea, or even like Medusa with like her snake hair, it's like the snakes are what gives like the power of like turning men to stone and all this kind of thing. And yeah, I think my hope was so much that we would like stop and like take note of this, like, look, this is a good thing happening, of like nature creeping back in and taking hold. And unfortunately, I don't know, I just feel like it's all, I actually think it's worse than before the pandemic, like not to be like, do you not think? Like, I think my next set of work, like I'd love it to be kind of about that a little bit, in our like very dysfunctional failed relationship with the natural world. I think that's like a really important thing for everyone to look at.
Can I ask a wee question moving on from that? Because obviously I know like how much you love the planet and you've done loads of like, you know, like socially responsible things as well, but how do you feel like that's affected your artwork in general, like your general practices? You're just really aware of everything?
I just want to paint animals now.
No,
just give up on the people.
Like I know like you do little recycled glass, and you've worked with obviously Viridor, like you've done like a lot of things with that. Like is it always in the back of your mind when you're creating things?
I think more and more now, and that's kind of like what I want to almost like utilize mythology to combine kind of my work portraying human beings with my work portraying the natural world. And I think mythology is like such a good way for that, right? Because you have all these like hybrids, like centaurs, Medusa, like harpies, all these things. So I think that'll be like a good way of kind of speaking about that. But yeah, with time I've become more and more interested in like wildlife and less interested with people.
The mouse started then.
It's awful. Where have you taken that? Oh God.
not to quell the vibe in the room at all, but I just want to say that we're coming up towards our stated time. We did start about 15 minutes late. I just want to check with you guys whether you're happy for us to carry on for, say, another 10, 15 minutes. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you very much. So let's carry on. What other questions have you got for Svetlana?
Not really a question maybe, Svetlana, but more comment to go back to the mythology thing of the mosaic, because it produced a Kraken reaction.
Yep.
But Medusa's been mentioned 3 times, and that was just a set of colour. I can't be the only one, but it produced an instant reaction. Yeah, I thought this take on Medusa, the snakes.
Yeah, actually, that's a really, really good observation, because I think so. Caravaggio is like one of my favourite painters, and I think pretty much every painting I do thinking of his work. And so you might know his Medusa, and it's also like a black circle with like the snakes and everything. And this one's almost like a flip on. Actually, I don't think I even thought about that consciously. I think that must have happened a bit subconsciously.
To me, it's exactly Medusa, because I've seen it. I've actually seen Caravaggio Medusa.
Have you?
It's my favourite.
I love it so much.
I just love it.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that is it.
I never realised, but that's what I was painting, just like my own version of that, I guess.
You were too focused on the Tesla thing.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Where is Caravaggio's Medusa? Where's it shown?
In Spain.
Is it? Have you seen it?
No, I have
Yeah, it's
not.
Spain. Yeah, in Madrid.
Oh no, then I have. Is it in the Prado?
I don't know, it's the, I can never say the 2 hyphenated,
The Sophia something.
Tyson, something.
Oh no, I haven't seen it then. Gonna go see it next time I'm there.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
100%.
Yes.
So good. Yeah, there's this giant mural of his in Malta. This is like the most beautiful cathedral I've ever seen in Valletta in Malta, and it's like this huge mural of St. John the Baptist getting his head cut off. It's just as violent as like the Medusa. This is like violent stuff. And it's, honestly, I stood in front of that for so long. It was like just the whole composition, the storytelling. And he did this thing where he reinterpreted biblical themes, but he made them, at the time, modern, and he made them look like modern day people were acting out these biblical themes and making them look very, very
Like relatable to people.
like horrifically realistic. And I think I take, like what you said about Cézanne, I take a lot of that. Like, so for a long time with my painting, like my narrative paintings were my like modern day interpretations of like timeless themes. So big inspiration.
Massive, isn't it? For those who haven't seen it, it takes up one whole wall of a big room.
Yeah, it's huge.
Like a whole wall, like the length of this.
Oh, not bigger. It's bigger. It's bigger than this, I would say.
Oh,
Is it not
wow.
bigger than
Oh,
this?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
massive.
bet it's huge to see.
It's so beautiful.
Malta's very random for it, or no?
Well, so Malta was Italian for a long time.
Okay.
And then like became independent. I don't know what. Right, don't question me on the history. I am not advised on the history of Malta, but yeah, it was Malta was basically Italy for a long time. So like it was.
That's how it became.
And there's a lot of mosaics there as well, by the way.
Next
I
trip
just
was-
loved it. I just absolutely loved it, didn't I?
Girls'
Great
holiday.
place for me.
Talking about research and holidays, where would you want to go? Let's exclude Malta, because that seems like it's a given. Where, aside from Malta,
Together or
could be together, could be independently. But if you could pick any place in the world that you think you would find artistic inspiration, where would you go?
Well, I've never been to America at all, and lots of my inspiration is from sort of 1950s New York, expressionism, abstract. So I think I would love to go to America. Actually, any part of America, but specifically maybe New York.
Okay.
Get a one with myself.
Yep,
dress trendy, smoke a cigarette, see if I can feel the vibe inside myself. I always feel like, I just feel like New York's like proper cool.
Good.
And very arty.
It can be.
No, have you been? Are you going to tell me? Are you going to tell me it's not like it?
No, I'm not going to tell
Let
you.
me
it's
live my
not
dream. No.
I'll tell you that it is very arty in certain places. It's very musical in other places. It's very theatrical in others. It's,
Yeah,
it's
see,
a
I love
whole
jazz.
mixture.
I love like eccentricness. I just love like a whole theatric and the experience of going to somewhere. I just think it would be like nothing I've ever seen before. So I feel like for me that's somewhere where not similar to anything I've been to before.
You will find that in New York.
Right, well there we go.
Yeah, definitely.
Svetlana.
So I've been to Mexico, but a place I'd love to go to that I haven't been to is Oaxaca. Because one of my favorite artists is Frida Kahlo.
Yep.
So that's my other like huge influence. Like her self-portraits are just incredible. Like the storytelling, the narrative building, but more than anything is like the emotion that is like just conveyed, and like all the pain and stuff that comes across.
Sensing a theme.
So I've been to Mexico City, but I don't think I'd go back there again.
Sorry, it's what's it called?
So Frida Kahlo she spent most of her life, and actually she's from Mexico City, but like a lot of her kind of influence, her traditional kind of influences are you would see more in like Oaxaca. So Oaxaca's more the Pacific coast. Mexico is more like central. Mexico City is more like central Mexico. So and also like the whole Day of the Dead thing is like biggest in Oaxaca City. So I'd love to see all of that, because that's obviously like massive.
The colours, the experience, the theatrics.
Yeah, that's like a huge theme in her work, and I feel like that kind of thing, this light and dark, right, of like what we were talking about, of like death being like this sad thing, but also being like a celebration, and I love all of that. So I think to experience like a Day of the Dead parade would be like super
especially the colours as well.
Yeah, and to see more of Frida Kahlo's work would be
Well, thank you both very much for that. I think that's a good place to stop. Unless there's any further questions from the audience right now, please bear in mind both our lovely artists will be around for the next 5 minutes or so, at least. I think more than happy to chat with you one-on-one. And for me, ladies, can I just say thank you? It's been a pleasure and a privilege to have you here, and thank you for your explanations and your conversation. It's genuinely been an absolute pleasure having you here. And to you as well, thank you to coming along for this first of our series of artist talk. The next one will be with Aaron Ross and Louis McNally. Aaron does the sort of pictures of the trees and the little astronauts behind you, and Louis does the birds and the picture of Cowgate over there. So they will be along on the 27th, I believe, of July. This current exhibition that we have here, including works by these two lovely ladies, is on until the 29th of July. And then following that, I appreciate this is a lot of dates, we have our next private view, which you are welcome to attend on Other Skies, with a couple of artists that will be sharing more information around soon. But for now, all I want to do is to say thank you again, ladies. That has been a really exciting conversation. I've certainly learnt a lot. I hope you guys have too. So
also, can I just say thank you for being such a wonderful host. I feel like your questions were really like on point and informative, and it felt really natural. And thank you to Leslie as well for hosting. You're over there. But thank you as well for hosting us in the gallery and putting on such a gorgeous display of our work. Like you've both made it an absolute pleasure to be a part of. Like honestly,
really
thank
great
you to the both of
opportunity
you.
and great fun.
I know, no nerves.
We set the bar high.
No, but
set the bar really high.
Yep.
Let's see what the boys do next time.
well, we might come along and ask some questions. Thank you, everyone.